Welcome to the podcast. My name is Fehinti Balogun. Today we have some very special guests talking to me about blackness and environmentalism and what the hell do we do? Okay, well, we should probably start off with like introductions. So if you could introduce yourselves, please. I shall go first. My name is Fehinti Balogun, otherwise known as F. F Money.
Push you that?
When can you start giving yourself aliases, right? Because,
man.
Listen, if I've been calling myself whatever for however long and no one else has done it, is now the time for me to just like be like, I've been calling myself F. for years. Doesn't matter if other people didn't call me that. I did.
Okay. So, okay. You know what? Sometimes we have to chart our own paths, innit? You have to self-determinate.
we need some evidence, man. We need some receipts for that. I need some receipts.
I want to see that birthday card that you wrote to yourself. Happy birthday, F.
M. M.
F Money.
I'm passing on. Shops.
How you doing? My name is Ṣọpẹ Dìrísù. I'm an actor. And actually, on the subject, I've never really had a nickname in my life. I don't know if Ṣọpẹ is an easy name that you can sort of abbreviate on or what. Maybe it's so difficult in itself that people are just trying to learn that first before they're trying to abbreviate it.
The reason you don't have a nickname, Ṣọpẹ, is because of white supremacy.
Isn't it? Everyone else got nicknames. I was just Soap because they didn't pronounce it right. And that definitely is white supremacy.
All right.
But do we all have like family names and our government name?
Yeah.
Family name. That's your nickname.
I don't know. No, I never had, because I know boys, Nigerian Yoruba boys called Ṣẹ́gun, and then they'll go by Victor, you know, at school. Because actually, that's the Yoruba translation. In English, Ṣẹ́gun means Victor, as in to be victorious.
Victorious.
Whoa.
But that's something every day.
Yeah. I know a lot of boys called Sean who became Sean at school. You know?
All of them men were Sean. All of them brothers were Sean.
Yeah.
All Seans. Sean, but your name's not written like that.
You know how the Irish do it S-E-A-N? Yeah, we just do it S-E-U-N. It's still short. Yeah. But no, I never really had a nickname. People just mispronounced it. And I only started correcting them with my chest in the last 10 years, maybe.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
But this isn't a podcast about identity politics. We're talking about the environment.
Listen.
So Daniel Bailey, man, let's move on to you.
There you go.
That was all
Thank you.
collective. But Daniel, please go ahead.
Hello, my name is Daniel Bailey, director, dramaturg. That is it, man. What kind of name did I have? My nickname? I can't even say my nickname on this. I don't know if it might go back to the whole case there.
Isn't it?
There's a whole thing there.
That nickname is the only thing that's linking you to their bodies.
The only thing. The only thing.
We've had a technical issue of sorts. Daniel, please, I'm going to have to ask, can you reintroduce yourself, please?
Allow him to reintroduce himself.
Myself. My name is Daniel Bailey. Yeah, that was a setup. My name is Daniel Bailey, director and dramaturg. Nickname, aliases, can't disclose, not right now.
I can't even do the whole no face, no case because name doesn't rhyme. But you know the sentiment is there.
Yeah.
So today I have asked you two beautiful, wonderful, incredible human beings to share this space with me for a couple of, let's say, 30 to 40 minutes, potentially, to talk about the world, really. The reason I sort of brought you two together is because you are two beautiful black men. You are two curious people. and I mean curious in the sense that you find joy in not knowing, as opposed to irritation. And I think it's a very beautiful thing. And I think that's something that we can all encourage ourselves to be, especially as Black men. I think sometimes when we are put into a box, it's safer for us to find our box, find who we are, and then never go outside of that, because that's how we survive. The world that we live in does not reward us for being particularly curious outside of societal constraints. And it's lovely to have this space to discuss some things with you two. It's a privilege. It's a goddamn privilege. Why did I ask today though? On the first, I'll say that first. So on the 1st of September, Extinction Rebellion are doing another protest. They're going back into civil disobedience. And for those that don't know, I did this talk about climate crisis. I've been doing it for a while, and myself and Daniel Bailey have been working on a project about that, and it's been part of my life in last year. And a lot of what I talked about was that you didn't have to go to the forefront in order to be part of the movement, and that there are lots of different ways of being part of the environmental movement. And I think this, for me, I'm up in Manchester. I'm very lucky to be filming a series and being part of my industry and having different types of conversations to include activism. But this for me counts as a part of the activism. This September 1st, why it's happening? Recently, in the trigger warning, I'm just going to give you a trigger warning. In the last couple of weeks, months during corona crisis, a report was released by the Climate Change Council Committee, the CCC, and it was talking about our predicted temperature increase. Now, when I did my talk, I was looking at the limitations of 1.5 and 2 degrees increase in temperature, which I told you guys before about, like how, you know, the UN said they were going to stop global temperatures warming to 2 degrees instead of 1 degrees. It's 1.5 degrees even above temperatures, and we'll re-explain this in the talk, so don't worry if you don't get that right now. But essentially, the idea that the last solution, the worst case scenario was 2 degrees increase in temperature. That was fixed in my brain politically, and that's what we need to get to. Now, the CCC reported that we are starting to prepare for 4 and 5 degrees increase in temperature.
What?
Yeah, so it's a suggestion to governments to start preparing for that. Now, the thing about that is you literally can't prepare for a 4 and 5 degree world, because we're talking about, in some cases, the death of 80% of the population. And what we're seeing now is, I don't know if anyone saw that tweet that was like, in Texas was like an unsurvivable storm. And it's like the first time in the history of ever you describe a storm as unsurvivable. Those kind of occurrences will become more and more frequent. The extreme weather changes that we experience now are becoming more and more frequent. And instead of curtailing them, these reports are saying, well, this is where we're going. And because you haven't hit any of these targets and aren't going to your own targets, the government's own targets, this is what we are preparing for. So as you can imagine, with that sort of realization of like, holy crap, you go, okay, well, I'm going to protest then, obviously, like, I'm going to do some form of protest. But in this space, I hit you with that first because it's a big thing, and let's not lie, it's a big subject. But that's not what I want to get stuck at. And I want to open up the discussion as well, because it's very, very easy when you look at all of these things to think that you are not important and can't do anything. And then the air suddenly becomes like yogurt. And I don't know about you, but I become very fixed in my place. I'm like, I just can't do anything. And and that's not true. That narrative isn't helpful. That's if I'm honest, a white supremacist patriarchal thought.
Capitalism, bro.
Yeah.
Capitalism. It comes down to it. Shops, tell us more about that.
Oh, I use capitalism loosely, but it has very far-reaching and devastating effects in presenting itself as the only system that's viable. And we don't have enough people who are thinking outside of it as to what the world would look like if we don't adopt this capitalist structure. And the fact that we are looking towards a 4 to 5 degree increase in temperatures is because that governments and multinational corporations are all more concerned with the wrong kind of green, not green as in nature, but green as in the color of money.
Yep.
And because of the world being driven by profits and more money making in the capitalist structure, that's pushing us closer and closer to where we are, whilst forcing everybody else to believe that actually there is this hierarchy in which you are the workers, we are the ruling class. It's all based on capitalism. Yeah. And the sooner we can sort of dismantle it and recreate the world in the way that we want it to be, the sooner we can reduce the temperatures by just returning to proper environmentally conscious practices, as opposed to just saying that we recycle, because we know already that that's not enough.
Yeah.
But it feels like suddenly there's such a shift because of capitalism. Just to kind of jump on your point, Ṣọpẹ, like because of capitalism, how it's so indoctrinated in our society and within our minds and in our communities, across the global world, like globalization as well, because that is so tied to our consciousness. Individuals feel like they're not powerful enough to make that move or to make that shift. Countries are almost not powerful enough because these kind of multinational, conglomerates, businesses own these countries, and rightly or wrongly right now are dictating what countries are able to do. So it feels like sometimes it's easy for us to just be able to go, all right, let's pinpoint it at a country that's not doing the work. But actually, when you look at it, if you've got Unilever and they've opened up 5 factories in one area, they've opened up a chemical waste place in another area. Like they're calling the shots, really, because countries, those especially developing countries, they need that money. So capitalism, so far-reaching, and it's such a system that promotes global, climate crisis and climate catastrophe right now.
Yeah.
Like, it's easy to get stuck in oneself and be like, yo, what can I do? I can't take on Unilever, not me on my one. Not how is that possible?
Yeah, it's so interesting because like the way they sell it to us is they're like, you need to Daniel, you Ṣọpẹ,
Yeah.
you need to fix it. You need to go recycle, and then you need to get on your bike and make sure you bike everywhere, and then you need to buy your eco products. And then if you and everyone else does that, it's fine. Great, cool. and then they're still feeding into this like capitalist narrative. And no one ever gets held responsible. But it's interesting. I was having this chat with a couple of friends who are heavily involved with the sort of TWT, Well Transformed Labour sort of movement there, and it was all about how do you build anti-capitalist structures, like how can we be part of fixing it? And what was so interesting is being called out on that question. Because even in me answering that question, I'm looking to fix it. I'm looking to be part of like the liberal elite in a Zoom call that come up with a solution and then do it. And it was just so interesting for someone to say to me, like, it's almost impossible to try and be a completely anti-capitalist system, because even in the Zoom call, like, this account is being paid for.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
It's not free.
Yep.
And then that goes out, and our job, I'm doing filming and I'm making money. Like, I'm not doing it for free. And we work together, we create stuff. Like, even if I am to preach on a podium, I'm renting that podium. I'm renting that stage. So like, try that. The best thing that this person said, shout out to Sam, that way madness lies. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
And what's so interesting is that if you just like take a moment and think about all the initiatives that made you an artist, like growing up, so many of those things will be anti-capitalist. They just don't call themselves anti-capitalist systems. So, for instance, when one of my friends did like this theatre workshop thing, and part of the thing that she never thought about, but upon reflection was like, oh, rah, that's mad, is that like people that couldn't afford it got their whole tuition paid for, and people that could afford it paid for it. And that was like
So, question.
Yeah, hit me.
Is that actually anti-capitalist, or is that just progressive in terms of the redistribution of wealth for making it equitable for everybody? However, the fact that the thing is still being paid for, or is being paid for with money as opposed to like physical exchanges or services, and that is still just the better form of capitalism, isn't it? I'm not going to profess to understand the structures incredibly or what else they could be, but as long as something is being driven by financial gain, or even like money as a medium of exchange rather than the exchange itself, is it not still in the same framework?
Is it? I guess, is it? So capitalism has run since the beginning of time, because even if we exchange even if we exchange calorie shells and they're not worth anything per se, it's all about the people. It's all about the community who put a value on that thing, wherever it is. So even if you say, all right, I'm going to give you 4 bricks as part of the work that you've done for me today. That exchange, is that still capitalism then? That's more of a question.
I suppose, something that I think I understand, and I'm open to be challenged and corrected and educated on it, is that capitalism funds you gaining wealth or capital because you want it or because you can have it, as opposed to because you need it. So when we were looking at exchanges before,
necessity.
When we're looking at exchanges before, it'd be like, oh, I'm gonna like make a door for you because that's my skill, but I need to feed my family. So you're like, okay, I'm gonna cook for you and give you food to take home to your family, and that's the exchange. Like, or like, I'm gonna give you this goat because you can milk it or you can use its hair for cashmere or whatever, and in return, I need you to cure my family because you have the skills as a doctor, So that the community is based on the exchange because of necessity, as opposed to like, oh, I'm a doctor and therefore I'm really important and I'm going to keep amassing land. Everyone give me land because I have power over everybody. That's just one of the sort of like minor understandings of something that I have. But yeah, like I said.
I mean, I just like to say for just I'm no expert. Like I didn't study it. I didn't go to university. I didn't like do an open university course online. Like I read a couple of books and I'm doing my best. Quite frankly.
I think that goes for all of us. That goes for all of us. But even our understanding is important.
Sorry?
No, I'm just saying our understanding is also important. I studied drama, but I went into economics lectures because they were free. Well, they were free for me. I paid for my drama course, but I used to sneak into economics because I was interested in that at the time when I was at university. So I'm not going to profess to know everything as well, but our understanding is important. How we understand something is important. But say that it is the be all and end all. So in capitalism, I guess it's one of these things. We've got in a situation where we have people who are not physically able. We have people who are disabled by a capacity, a society, depending on how you see it. If they can't exchange something physically, then how would they be paid? Or how would they be? Do you know what I mean? How can they contribute? How can someone contribute? Would it be through
one man's disability? Like, okay, so I'm not going to be able to plow your field, but I may be able to, I don't know, look after your children.
Right, a
Or
contract.
there's like a mental capacity that I've got. The reason I didn't go to contracts or accounting and stuff like that is because I think some of those are intrinsic in capitalism in terms of exchange for money. But I may be a storyteller, you know? There are so many other things that sometimes we don't see past someone's disability to the skills that they could have. But I'm also aware that in some societies, I'm thinking Spartan now, some people could be left behind by the world. But I suppose the thinking that we're trying to achieve is thinking outside of capitalism in a way that is equitable and progressive for everybody. So it won't necessarily be what it has been before, but we're looking to the future to what it can be.
So I was talking to a friend about the different types of capitalism, because we've got capitalism as a structure, and then we've got the branches of neoliberal capitalism, which then takes on
neoliberalism.
Of like the individual, and then we get into like nuclear homes, individualistic thinking towards movement and the person and the company, and those being separate things, and that's where that sort of thing comes from. And I mean, I didn't get to read it, but my friend was like, you know, you remove a structure of being, and you're sort of left with a void, which can just be filled with dictators, often historically, and actually there needs to be like a middle ground had before you shift into something else. A different version of capitalism. Again, I don't know enough about it to ponder as to what that looks like. But what is interesting for me is when I was talking to another friend about this issue, they were like, bit by bit, just being in the positions that you are and investing in grassroots movements and like being part of a collective is absolutely the way forward. As opposed to us believing the narrative that we're often given, that we have just discovered this problem, that we have to fix it, and that it's going to happen now. And then you erase the Maria Silvias, the Phil Silvios, the Ken Saro-Wiwas. Like you erase that whole history of people that look like you, that did the thing. Like, and actually we're not doing it by ourselves. We're just joining the ranks of other people. I sort of wish there was like like a book of grassroots movements, and like, so we could all just meet up and just like go, oh, sick, you're all doing that on Wednesday? Great. Us lot will come on Wednesday and we'll help you with that. I've got to do this thing on Friday. Sick, come along. Do you know what I mean?
But that's there. That can exist. Why can't it exist? You just thought of something that might already exist. It might already exist. If it doesn't, then you're the author of it already. And it's about you being empowered and feeling supported by us to be able to continue that thinking into something that becomes an action. So, go on. Sorry. Go on.
No, please.
I was going to ask about people before us. So, like all of us, I've come to climate crisis because of yourself, and because I've come to understanding climate crisis because of yourself, because of some of the people that have been around me for a long amount of time, who I might not have necessarily seen. I might not have known it was that they were doing, that they were activists, but actually in our own community they were growing up with Rastafarians back. I live in West London now, but when I lived in North West London, I grew up with a Rastafarian who used to take me from school. And she was very conscious about, one, us, how we got back and forth from school, 2, what we ate, 3, what we learned, 4, how we treated the place around us. She was so conscious. She was a community leader. So she was doing her own set of activism. Her name's Ahata, Zoline. She's from North West London, St. Russ, to be precise. And all her children were raised that way. And I was like one of us. So I didn't know, but from a young age, she was doing that. I couldn't connect the dots until I got into my my late 20s, into my 30s. So there's all of this stuff that's happening around us. Why are we not able to connect the dots? Why are we not more conscious about what is happening amongst, globally, and also within our community? It's more of a question, really, but I'm just kind of linking it to the thought of what you were saying of like, there were people before us doing things, but we're just not being able to piece it together.
Mm. Do you think, and you can tell me to do one fully.
Do one, bro. I'm not answering your questions.
Next question.
Yeah.
Next question. I didn't come here for that still. Do you think that there is a culture, especially amongst men, of money, pussy, power, and that is a huge distraction from our environment and community, especially when you're trying to get independence as a man in the world, confidence, have your own space, growing in our society, and that like it's real. Like money, pussy, power was in a lot of the songs I listened to, was in a lot of the TV shows and videos I saw, like, money over pussy on Lil Wayne's Everything, which I listened to a lot, which then just meant like work hard at school, make P and get gone. And all of that narrative of like, be that man, get money, get pussy, get power, and don't necessarily invest in your community or be part of that world around you, or like and thinking laterally as opposed to like does that evoke anything in either of you?
I immediately feel like, I suppose, I don't know if this is a defensive reaction. I don't even know what I'm defending. But I immediately feel like money, pussy, power immediately sort of denigrates the black man. And I feel like one's responsibility to their community is not a black issue. It's a human issue. I think humans have changed from what they were, from being part of a bigger community within your village to being very insular and caring about your own family or caring about your own sort of personal wealth or personal power. So yes, I think that money, pussy, power is a version of that we hear a lot as black men. But I don't think that is actually the message that's being taught to us. The message is broader and bigger and more problematic, but it's just been translated into money, pussy, power in this sort of small, simplistic microcosm of the human race, I think that a lot of right-wing politics are money, pussy, power, but in a different vernacular. Do you know what I mean? So I suppose my first instance was like, it's not a race thing. It's not a black thing. This disconnection with those around us. And if anything, looking globally, global majority people, black people, indigenous people, people who are still in their motherlands are way more connected to the soil like if you look at an African village or a Nigerian village compared to a village in England, you'll find way more people who are like living off the land and people who are connected with each other than a small village of 1,000 people in Oxfordshire,
Mm-hmm. I would, and again, stop me, but I would argue that it isn't, I think that narrative isn't necessarily for black men. I think money, pussy, power is like the heart of white supremacist patriarchy and capitalism. Like, I honestly think that is the core of it, and it does filter through black musicians, but also through business, through
Donald Trump is money, pussy, power.
Donald Trump is the best example right now, even more so than a old school Lil Wayne joint. Donald Trump is the best example of that right now.
Okay, sorry. I think the way you packaged it in terms of like rap music and Lil Wayne, I think that was what tainted my understanding of what you're saying rather than the actual message itself. So I apologize for that.
No, that was the way that I had originally received it in the clearest form from my personal experience. But that is not to say that is the Black experience or
Sure.
Black people. So
All right, sure.
Yeah. Money, pussy, but I'd even frame it a little bit different. I'd probably say, money, power, pussy.
I was
Across the
going to say,
whole
actually,
patriarchy.
money and
Yeah,
pussy are both power, because pussy is power over women and power over people who are not cis hetero men. And money is the means by which I express or show or use my power. So it's all about power.
Precisely.
It's all
Power.
about supremacy.
It's all about power. So putting power at the top. I think that is it's not only the patriarchy, and it's not only a kind of misogynistic view of what's been flooded out to us now. I'd say it is a global. It's a global thing. It's not even just for men anymore, because women adhere to that in the same way that men adhere to it. It obviously drove us first, but that is obviously that there's something that's human in nature. There's human nature about it, actually. As much as and look, I'm happy, and I want you lot to disagree with me here, but there's also something that is also quite natural about men wanting to be powerful, men wanting to have power and being able to. And when I say money, I don't necessarily mean cash money. I mean being able to support their family. So however we see money, and I'm hating myself for saying this right now, but however we see money, that is the thing. I mean, that feels like absolutely, what we've been moving to from the beginning of time. Sometimes the idea to to mate, for instance, can be seen as PUSSY for men. Yeah, the idea to have power is about, if you're moving in a band and this is where you've been able to live off this land, and now this land's become barren, you move into someone else's space, suddenly you're taking over that. That's power, right? And then you've got money, which is what I talked about. It's just about resources, right? How we see resources. So it's been skewed along the line of time from the necessity that we had and what we thought of, what we thought the world to be at a particular time, to now being simplified in this kind of geography, kind of money, pussy, power, which is like crazy. It sounds crazy, but when you think about it, you think about resources, you think about preserving one's life, you think about having the power, whether that be mental or physical, whatever, having the power to outwit someone, or to move in another man's territory. Those are all things that came to us quite naturally, no? Or not? I don't know.
Instinctively, in terms of survival. I understand what you're saying. There are many different... Oh, sorry, Fehinti, please.
No.
So there are many different versions of what I'm about to say. And it's to do with the difference between humans and animals. And actually, over my years on this earth, I've learned that that's not strictly true. But what you said made me think of that. And it was to do with what is human civilization and what separates humans from animals. And one idea was that the ability to think into the future and the past, as opposed to not responding to stimuli and relying on your instincts, like, oh, I'm cold, I need to get warm, or I need to eat, so I'm going to hunt now. The fact that we've got food in our fridge means that we're thinking forward to when we will be hungry in the future, and memories that we have, not just in terms of where we can find water, but in terms of emotional connections that we've had with other people. So there are lots of different versions of that, but I just thought of that when you mentioned it now, because yes, I believe that a lot of patriarchal tendencies, or the instruction that we've received from it, is based scientifically in the instinct that we had to recreate, to survive in the past. But as human beings now, a part of our civilization and evolution is that we can think beyond just our instincts. And so the choice to weaponize our instincts rather than suppress or reimagine them, I think, is part of the problem.
Reimagine is good. Reimagine is good.
Part of the problem of the systems that we're trying to tackle at the moment. rather than sitting back and saying like, oh yeah, I mean, but it's scientific, we all want to reproduce, or we all want to be safe, we all need to protect our lineage in terms of making sure that that we have the resources for them. We should be being like, yes, that is a part of human nature, but this is the world we're trying to build, I think, or this is where we want humans to evolve to the point where we almost reprogram ourselves in the way that a lot of biohackers are trying to do, to be a lot more altruistic and a lot more about communities and a lot more equal than perhaps our base nature, reptilian minds, instincts tell us to. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even nature is an interesting word, isn't it? Because like, is it nature? Is it nurture? Do you know what I mean? Because just recently, in the last year, reading up on identity politics and sexual identification, and like the nuances of it, the absolute like broadness of all of that, where I was given growing up 2 binaries for everything.
That's it.
Boy, girl, good, bad, powerful, weak. And then all of a sudden, like, and none of those binaries serve anybody. Do you know what I mean? Like, I feel like we spend all of our lives adhering to those 2 binaries, and then if we're lucky enough, we get enough money to like have counselling or a therapist, only to like unlearn all of those structures, and just to be like, oh wait, do you mean I'm not bad if I do this, or like I don't have to be just this? And then you're like, where the fuck did all of those things come from? And why do they exist? And literally all of them, what are they? White supremacy, patriarchy.
Capitalism.
Yeah.
It all feeds back to that thing, because it doesn't serve you. It doesn't serve us.
It doesn't serve us right now, no.
Sorry.
No, I'm just saying, it doesn't serve us right now, and in the state that we are, in the place where we are right now as humans. It doesn't serve us at all.
And it's sort of like, it's almost bizarre to think that we have been made to believe that the spectrum of human is so basic.
So limited.
So limited. It's wild. And then drawing back to what Shops was saying earlier about like capitalist structures, you know, whether we're talking about neo-capitalism or we're talking about capitalism, like all of these things in like recorded memory are like fairly new. Like neoliberalism is like not old, like 1900s. When did that come with like Thatcher Reagan?
It's 1900s. Yeah.
So what? There was an age of our lineage that we know who are alive or recently passed that didn't have this experience at all, and then going back, another very different experience. So like, or just drawing on what you said, Daniel, earlier, imagination, the idea of like the brilliant thing that these structures do is limit our imagination to what's possible and achievable. That's where when we get presented leaders like Corbyn, sorry, I said it, don't at me, but like when we get people with like agendas who do not work within our binary aggressive white male structure, which is so interesting, because as soon as you like even suggest to the British public that we might be led by someone who is a pacifist, anyway, what are you talking about? You want us to die?
Communist! You're a communist!
You're a communist!
You're a communist.
You're a communist. You know
how does that still hold weight now in 2020? How does that still hold weight?
I love it.
In America, it still holds weight in America.
Bro, it's
people would denounce their mum.
We've got no food in the house this week. That's what it would have been like with Corbyn. There you go. There we go. We've got no food. No food in the house. Hold on. It's broken. It's ridiculous. It's so, but that's the brilliant thing of like the structures of our imaginations are so tightly fixed and binary that as soon as you venture outside of them, it seems impossible. And that, like, if like that's Death Star level tactics, like you have to applaud it. Like, honestly,
it's the Matrix, isn't it? It's the Matrix.
I was going to say it's the
Matrix.
It's the, what do you call it? The not the parable, but the parable of the cave. You know, have you
Mm.
heard it? Yeah, exactly.
Could you explain the parable of the cave for those that have never heard it, please, Shops?
I really wish I knew who it was. I'm gonna Google.
It's Aristotle,
who.
right?
Well, I'm just gonna make sure because it's important for people to know, and it's important it's important for me to know as well. Parable of the cave. Allegory of the cave is by Plato. So to distill it down quickly, two men were born in a cave in total darkness, right? And they lived their whole lives in this cave, just like with no knowledge of the outside. And one day, one of them, it's like, there must be something outside. There must be something outside. The other guy's like, there's nothing. This is our entire world. This is all that we understand. And he's like, I'm going to go. He's like, you can go, but there's nowhere to go. One guy goes out. He goes out into the world. His eyes are blinded at first because he's not used to the light. And then he sees the world. He sees the trees. He sees the mountains. He sees the animals. He sees the rivers. Everything is beautiful in his sight. And he comes back into this cave. It's hard at first because his eyes have been opened to the world. And his eyes have to almost readjust to the darkness of the cave. And he finds his brother. He's like, yo, bro, the world is beautiful. There's this thing. It's wet and slippery. It's called water. And it flows through this, I can't even describe it. It's like green and lush, and it's a little bit prickly, but it's soft, and grass is everywhere. There are mountains, there are birds, animals flying through the air singing. And his bro is just like, you're mad. You have lost your mind. These things cannot exist. Because his mind is so trapped within the cave that he can't imagine any of the things that his brother's telling him about. And so his brother's like, there's no way I'm staying in this cave. I can't live when the world is so beautiful. And his brother is to him like, go again if you want. I'm not coming with you because there's nothing there. And that is, you can apply that to so many things, but at the moment we're applying it to capitalism. Capitalism is the cave that is oppressing our minds and keeping it small. And we need to explore and think and dream of what the world looks like outside of it.
It's also interesting that, like, with that example, you have the freedom. You got the freedom to, like, walk outside the cave, right? But with our current world, like, I'm very aware. Like, listen, I had dinner last night. Listen.
I'm just glad you ate, bro. I'm glad you nourished yourself.
I'm ready for this.
I went out to dinner last night and was at this posh restaurant, whatever. And like, I'm not from that. I've never been from that. I've the most I spent on a meal is maybe like 40 quid ever, whatever. And that's whatever. And we're sat at this table and we're talking. And obviously, I had a drink and I get a bit political, and it's like,
religion and politics, bro. The two things. Come on.
No, listen. It comes down to the white man. And what is it's like
what? Jesus made wine, man. What you say? You're white man.
I have white friends and I love them dearly. Just so people know.
No, because that's the first time I've heard it in reverse. Like, I've got white friends. I'm not racist. Can you imagine?
Just so you know, when I'm talking about the white capitalist structure, I'm not talking about you lot individually. Yeah, I know your mum.
We're talking about when I say white supremacist, I mean it in the bell hooks way of addressing the system that perpetuates itself, not about the individual. Please don't at me. Anyway.
That said, if you're facilitating the system perpetuating itself,
I mean,
if the shoe fits, you better wear it,
I'm clicking. Okay. So I'm at this dinner.
Mm-hmm.
It's all relevant, I promise. I'm at this dinner, and it's super posh, whatever. And then I start getting political, right? And then it hits me, right? That, like, boy, I am at a restaurant eating food, talking about like capitalist structures and anti-capitalism and sort of like grassroots movements, whilst like having champagne in my hand. You know what I mean? Like actually, like it's actually wild. Like it's actually mad. And it's like, it's a real moment where you look at yourself and you're like, bro, sit down.
The champagne glass is the Zoom call, bro.
That's the tree on your head. Like,
Allow me, a Sennheisers.
Look at you. You with your Mac, because I know you're both using Macs, you know what I mean?
Bruh.
No Macs, I ain't got no Macs, no Apple. But it's the truth. But we can't escape it. At the moment, we're not, it's so hard to escape it. It's so hard to escape it in every form of our lives, whether it's our working lives, our family lives, our love lives. You can't escape it at the moment. To like untangle yourself, not to use Jada and August's lines now, which is entanglement. We're in an entanglement, aren't we? We're in an entanglement right now.
Yeah.
And for us to get ourselves out of that, we have to reimagine a world that is different from different from the world that we see currently right now. So it won't be too long. It'll be tomorrow before I'm indulging in something that's capitalist related, or even later on tonight when I turn on my Netflix. Unfortunately, there are other streaming devices just in case people.
This is not an ad. This is not an ad. We're not getting no money from Beats. We're getting no money from Netflix.
Apple, Netflix, Amazon. No one's getting money from this.
Yeah. Although what I would say,
this is. Yeah, sorry, no, but as I say, but unfortunately, this is where we're going to put. This is where we put our happiness. This is where we put our livelihoods. This is where we put our lifestyle. It all exists in these things. So to untangle ourselves is, it's difficult, but it's not impossible. Sorry.
No, it's just it's similar to what I said earlier about it's not about looking backwards to what it was, but to forwards to what it could be. Because at the moment, the only form of disentangling ourselves from this is to, as some people have done, go completely off grid, and that is a return to the wilderness, which I respect in some ways. I sort of fantasize about. I've spent many hours on YouTube watching my man in the Amazon rainforest digging out the clay, starting fires, and just like that guy is a man connected to the earth. That guy. And also but then again, we're watching him on YouTube, isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Even he hasn't escaped it. But in order to remove ourselves from all of these modern conveniences, these luxuries, because these things that facilitate the human existence today, it is scary to go dark. So that's why people reject it even more. There's no way I'm giving up a house. Yeah. I'm paying a mortgage, right? So that's capital. To live on the streets. That's wild. I can't do that. So it is really about, we need to employ a think tank of thinkers who can dream up what the world can look like in the future. These modern day philosophers,
So going back, I hadn't read that it's that at the moment they're renegotiating a 4 to 5% increase in the world. That sounds like absolute. It is like madness.
Sounds like murder, man.
No, that's cool. It sounds absolutely abominable. Like people can even think that we can operate like that when there's people dying right now. California was the hottest place in the world the other day. Like where? California. Why is California the hottest place in the world right now?
Has Australia stopped burning?
Has the Amazon?
Has the UK stopped burning? We had a bushfire the other day here in the UK. We
are quite literally on fire and are being distracted and overwhelmed to the point of the need of a distraction. Do you know what I mean? And we are constantly told you can only have one issue. You can pick being black and oppressed, or you can pick being a climate activist and oppressed, or you can pick being disabled and oppressed, or you can pick being a woman and oppressed, like that or
working class and oppressed, or
you can pick
transgendered and oppressed, or queer and oppressed.
And all these things are true,
but you can only have one. And the moment you try and pick another, it won't work. They're not the same. And actually, the whole thing, and the whole reason I wanted to do this was just that whole thing of intersectional thinking, man. Like when you are fighting against oppression, you are not just fighting against oppression for Black people, for trans people, for people, any type of people. You are fighting against oppression for all types of people. And so now, when it comes to our activism, and I want to break away from that whole thing of what is activism, because that pisses me off, you know, because then you almost need a qualification to be an activist. And to me, being an activist just means an active citizen, being part of your world, actively attempting to change it. And is that not just being alive? Do you know what I mean? Like just being,
nowadays,
being a molecule, passing energy to other molecules. Don't quote me on that. Anyway, listen. I want to thank you both so much for coming on to this and to chatting with me today. It's been an absolute joy. There are a couple of things going on at the minute, which I will highlight. So obviously, COP26 was supposed to be this year. It's a conference of the parties, meeting of the whole world in Glasgow. Because of Corona, it's been moved to 2021. We have a lead up to that now. And more than ever before, we need artists, we need people that look like us, that feel like us, to raise our voices. I know, Shops and Dan, you've been doing a lot in your communities and also educating ourselves to how to help Black women and support them, and how to help other oppressed peoples in societies. All of that is intersectional. All of it is part of the movement. And now we're just having to push forward for like challenging this government. Like it gets to the point of like actually quite polemically in focusing on like calling these motherfuckers out in the way that we have done for other things, and we need to highlight climate as a huge. So again, XR may not be the way forward for people, but it's what inspired me to do this podcast. I am unable to make some XR events in person because of the contract that I'm currently on, but I'm doing all sorts of things on social media and talks. There are all sorts of other charities happening at the minute, some of which I'll try and highlight when this goes out. Oh, yeah. That's my producer. She's so good. I'm on social media. I'm at Fehinti Balogun. If you don't know how to spell it, you're racist.
That's what Google is for.
If you don't know how to pronounce it, you're racist. Don't at me. Or you can't at me because you can't find me.
1 minute.
You're either ignorant or ill-educated or racist. You can pick one or you can do something about it.
That's activism right there.
Dan and Shops, how do we find you on social media? What are you in? I mean, I know you have been in quite a lot of stuff, but just tell us about yourselves. How can we find you?
Find him on Sky. Find him on Sky Atlantic. You can find him on. I ain't endorsing none of these. I'm just saying, if you would have find him.
They're not paying me anymore, bro. There's no ads in this podcast. But let's connecting with the world via Instagram, another culture. But my name is Ṣọpẹ Dìrísù. It's just that on Instagram as well, at Ṣọpẹ Dìrísù. And as Fehinti says, if you can't say it, you can't pronounce it, you can't spell it, you're racist. Do something about it, innit?
What can I say that as well?
I'll never forget when Uzo Adoba said that, like, the world has learned to say the name Tchaikovsky. And if they can learn to say the name Tchaikovsky, they can learn to pronounce Uzo correctly. They can learn to pronounce Ṣọpẹ correctly, Fehinti correctly, and Daniel Bailey correctly as well. But honestly, don't get surprised when you see Daniel Bailey walk into the room and he's not white. What are you doing? That's racist.
That's my truth. That is my truth right there. Then they see me roll up with dreads. Everybody's shocked. They're still looking for Daniel Bailey. They're still looking for him.
Yeah, enough of that. Enough of that. Stop it.
Dan, we find?
I'm off social media. How can you find me? I'm off social media for the moment. I'm taking a break. I needed one.
Very important.
But you can find me on. Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on Instagram at Daniel Bailey. You can find me on Twitter at Daniel L Bailey. Don't ask me what the L's for.
That's the nickname that the government doesn't need to know. Remember. And also, if you want to roll up on Daniel Bailey, just reach him at the Bush Theatre. He's always there.
Reach me at the Bush Theatre. That's where I'm at.
But he's rolling deep. He's rolling deep. So don't think you can just catch him slipping in it.
Thank you so much for listening in, and thank you for coming to talk to me, to Ṣọpẹ, to Daniel. It has been an enlightening evening of conversation and just a goddamn joy. There will be links on the podcast for how to reach you, and also different events and things to get involved in, such as XR or other intersectional charities for fights against oppression. Those motherfuckers got to be held accountable. And we'll see you soon. Thanks again. Got my radio voice on that.